Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome back to the deep dive.
And peace be upon all of you. We are definitely ready for a deep immersion today.
I think so. Today's mission is, it's very focused. We are examining a really rigorous scholarly analysis of prophetic leadership.
Right. And our sources, they move far beyond just simple history or, theology.
Exactly. We're treating the lives of figures like Moses, Joseph, David, and Muhammad, peace be upon them all, as a kind of masterclass.
Masterclass in political science, in ethics, in administration.
And the goal isn't just to learn about these prophets, it's about extracting the universal actionable principles. We're looking for the blueprint.
The blueprint for governance, for competence, for character, it transcends time and culture.
So if you've ever wondered about the foundational political theory that, that governed early Islamic civilization, this is your shortcut.
It really is. This deep dive, it crystallizes that complex relationship between competence, character, and crisis management. It turns it into a set of timeless principles.
And hopefully it delivers some of those aha moments about what makes a leader truly effective.
Exactly. We're looking at what the sources consider the ultimate standard for how to lead, not just effectively, but justly and ethically.
And to do that, we have to start by establishing the divine framework, because in this context, leadership is fundamentally theological.
It has to be. It's rooted in three really towering, dense concepts that you just can't ignore. They are the non-negotiable terms of the leadership contract.
Khilafah, Amanah, and Imamah.
Let's begin with Khilafah, the concept of vicegerency or stewardship. This is the ultimate starting premise for this entire model.
Okay, so what is that core premise?
The sources insist that ultimate sovereignty, the final authority, belongs exclusively to the Creator.
Known as Al-Hakim, the ultimate judge and ruler.
Precisely. Therefore, any human leadership is never absolute. It's merely a deputyship, a stewardship.
That is a radical concept. It really is.
Yeah.
Because it immediately limits the scope of human authority, no matter what title the leader has.
King, president, caliph, it doesn't matter.
Right. When God declares in Surah Al-Baqarah, "Indeed, I will make upon the earth a successor, a Khalifa," he's setting up a hierarchy.
He is. It's a hierarchy where the human ruler is an agent, managing assets and people on behalf of the true owner.
So it's a built-in theological check and balance against the whole idea of unchecked power.
Absolutely. The moment a leader claims absolute, divine, or unchallenged authority, they are functionally violating the original contract of Khilafah.
They're managing a portfolio, the earth and its people, but the title deed, that belongs somewhere else.
And that structure is meant to guarantee that accountability is baked into the very definition of governance from the get-go.
So if the human leader is an agent, they're managing assets that aren't truly theirs, and that links directly to the second massive concept you mentioned.
Amanah, the burden of trust.
And it's more than just trust, isn't it?
Oh, it's not just a trust, it's a terrifying liability, which is why the sources reference its dramatic nature in Surah Al-Asr.
Right, where the trust was offered to the heavens, the earth, and the mountains.
The most monumental entities you can imagine, and they all refuse it. They were afraid of the weight of that accountability. But man took it on.
That refusal, it really speaks volumes about the gravity of this ethical obligation. If the mountains feared it, what exactly makes this trust so uniquely burdensome for us, and especially for leaders?
Well, exegetes like Ibn Kathir and Al-Qurtubi, they clarify that the Amanah is the weight of moral responsibility, but it's coupled with free will.
The capacity for moral choice.
Exactly. And when you apply that to governance, the leader becomes responsible not just for their own personal integrity, but for the safety, the welfare, the moral trajectory of the entire flock.
So it transforms leadership from a desirable status symbol
Into a profound, almost existential risk. Every single decision, every resource allocation, every act of justice or injustice is logged against this singular trust. It's the ultimate corporate and spiritual liability.
Okay, so if Khilafah is the cosmic job title and Amanah is the spiritual liability, how do you translate that into a practical day-to-day job description for a governor or a judge or even just a regional manager?
That's where we get the operational model, Raya, which is the shepherd model.
The shepherd model.
And the fundamental shift is articulated in the famous hadith of the Prophet Muhammad. Every one of you is a shepherd and is responsible for his flock.
So the leadership paradigm shifts. The leader stops seeing himself as Malik the owner, who can exploit resources.
And starts seeing himself as Raya the guardian.
The shepherd protects, he guides, he finds pasture, but he never ever owns the sheep. His authority is derived entirely from his duty to protect the assets of the true owner.
Precisely. And this model compels the leader to prioritize welfare over personal gain. Their success is measured by the health, safety, and growth of the community.
Not by how much personal power or wealth they can accumulate.
It serves as the ethical baseline for all administrative functions. It ensures that governance is rooted in service, not in ego.
Now, this ideal sounds beautiful, but the history of governance is, well, it's messy. How did the classical jurists try to turn this spiritual ideal into a legal and constitutional framework that could survive human weakness?
That's the key question. They understood the need to codify the ideal, and three figures really stand out. First, you have Al-Mawardi, who provided the authoritative legal blueprint.
In his work, Al-Ahkam al-Sultaniya.
That's the one. He defined the imamah, the supreme leadership, as succeeding the prophethood in two main duties.
Defending the faith, the din.
And administering the temporal world, the dunya.
And that blend of spiritual and state authority, din and dunya, is so central to this model. But he got very prescriptive about the necessary qualities, didn't he? It's a merit-based system.
Absolutely. Mawardi laid out 7 requirements which function as the detailed job prerequisites. We can highlight 3 that are universal for any successful leader anywhere.
Okay, what's the first?
First, justice adala. And this isn't just about being a good person. It's about the consistent, non-wavering application of law.
So personal bias, wealth, tribal affiliation, none of that can sway your decisions.
It can't. This quality is the primary internal defense against tyranny and systemic corruption.
And the second one was knowledge, ilm.
Yes, and specifically defined as the capacity for independent legal judgment, or ijtihad.
Now that's critical. What does that mean in practical terms? Does the leader have to be a top scholar in every field?
No, not at all. But they must have the intellectual capacity and the critical thinking skills to understand complex national and international issues. They have to be able to weigh conflicting expert advice and make consequential, reasoned decisions.
Based on evidence and foundational principles.
Exactly. Mawardi argued that an ignorant leader, no matter how pious they are personally, is functionally unqualified. They simply cannot perform their primary duty of solving complex problems.
And the third quality?
Courage. Najda. Political fortitude.
Let's define that a bit more. What does najda really mean in a constitutional context? It's not just physical bravery?
No, it's the political fortitude required to execute unpopular but necessary policies. It's the strength to withstand the inevitable political pressure or public outcry when a difficult decision has to be made for the long-term good of the community.
Things like austerity measures or painful institutional reforms.
Yes, or the moral spine to maintain internal order and enforce the laws impartially, even against powerful and well-connected interests who might be, funding the leader's administration.
So Mawardi's framework is basically an objective contract. If the leader fails these objective tests, the contract is potentially void.
That's the implication.
So if Mawardi gives us the constitutional structure, Al-Ghazali, writing later, he gives us the ethical check on that power.
Al-Ghazali is the ethicist of governance. He warned that the state is merely a direct reflection of the ruler's internal moral state.
Right, in his Counsel for Kings. He says the ruler is God's shadow on earth only if they uphold justice.
Only. The moment they deviate, that title is forfeited, and they become a source of oppression. His central thesis is psychological. Good governance begins with self-governance.
You can't bring order to the world if your own soul, your nafs, is consumed by greed or ego or lust for power.
And the most dangerous threat he identifies is something that's so often overlooked in political theory.
The corruption of the inner circle.
Absolutely. Ghazali provides this chilling diagnosis of how institutional corruption spreads. It often starts not with the ruler, but with the intellectual class. The scholars, the legal advisors.
The ones who substitute honest, critical counsel for sycophancy.
They prioritize wealth or status or just being close to power over speaking truth to that power. And this intellectual and ethical corruption is then imported directly into the state structure. It provides a theological or ethical justification for the ruler's tyranny.
So the ruler's duty is to actively cultivate an environment where honest, even critical critique is rewarded, not suppressed.
It's essential.
So we have the ideal, the legal requirements, the ethical guardrails, but then Ibn Khaldun comes along and introduces this radical sociological realism. He asks, how does power actually get mobilized and maintained on the ground?
And this is where it gets really interesting. Khaldun, the father of sociology, he grounds the whole discussion in asabiyya.
Social solidarity, group feeling.
Yes. He argued that no leadership, whether it's religious or secular, can achieve stable, lasting authority without a strong sense of internal cohesion or shared purpose among its ruling group.
That famous solidarity that drives conquest and builds dynasties, how does that translate into, say, modern political organizing?
You can think of it as intense institutional loyalty combined with a powerful shared identity, be it tribal, ideological, or national. It's the engine that drives a group to conquer, establish, and maintain authority.
But he also observed that it has a shelf life.
It does. Khaldun saw that asabiya naturally weakens over time. Through luxury, complacency, the decay of those hardship-forged bonds, and that leads to the inevitable decline and overthrow of dynasties. It's a natural life cycle for governance, independent of just moral virtue.
But Khaldun then used this sociological reality to reinforce the theological ideal. He makes this crucial distinction between mulk and khilafah.
Precisely. Mulk is royal authority. It's the raw, self-serving exercise of power, driven by force and the accumulation of wealth and prestige for the ruling family. It's the natural state of human politics.
But khilafah?
Khilafah is the ideal moral order. It successfully harnesses that powerful social cohesion, that asabiya, not for private gain, but to serve the common spiritual and material good of the entire population. It adheres to the foundational Amanah.
So the prophetic model is defined by this transformation, using the reality of power, the asabiya, to achieve the objective of justice, the khilafah.
That is the goal.
That's a comprehensive theoretical framework. But if we need to select a real-world leader, a minister, a general, a governor, how do we synthesize all those requirements into a practical hiring matrix? That's where Ibn Taymiyyah's pragmatic doctrine comes in.
Right. Ibn Taymiyyah, in his work Al-Siyasa al-Sharia, provides the classic, actionable framework based on the Moses narrative.
Al-Qoya al-Amin, the strong and the trustworthy.
That's it. He argues that every single position of responsibility requires two non-negotiable pillars.
Okay, pillar one, strength. Quwwah. This is competence. We're talking about specialized knowledge, strategic thinking, administrative skill.
Operational capability, the political acumen to actually execute decisions effectively. You have to know how to do the job.
And pillar two, trustworthiness, Amanah. This is the moral dimension.
Integrity, piety, the fear of God, and ensuring resources are not embezzled. You must have the character to ensure the job is done ethically. Taymiyyah insisted that neglecting either pillar leads to systemic failure.
But this is where the famous philosophical dilemma comes in, right? When you have to choose between a highly competent individual who lacks piety and a highly pious individual who lacks competence.
Yes, the trade-off theory. It's the most challenging calculus.
So what's the answer?
Ibn Taymiyyah argues that for highly functional, critical roles like administering the treasury, commanding an army, managing infrastructure projects, competence, Quwwah, sometimes must be prioritized.
Provided the person isn't overtly rebellious or tyrannical.
Exactly.
That calculus sounds, well, it sounds dangerously close to justifying that the ends justify the means. How did Ibn Taymiyyah make sure that the competent but less pious person didn't just use their skills for their own personal tyranny?
His reasoning is brutally utilitarian. It's focused entirely on collective harm mitigation. He argued that the pious but incompetent person, their lack of skill, harms the entire community.
It leads to economic collapse, loss of defense, administrative chaos.
Which is a form of collective tyranny against the populace. That harm is immediate and widespread.
Whereas the competent person, even if they have personal sins,
they can still utilize their skill for the benefit of the community, and their personal moral failing is between them and the Creator, provided they don't abuse the office itself.
In other words, incompetence in a vital state function is seen as a greater public threat than a personal moral failing in that specific context.
It elevates organizational effectiveness and public welfare above the personal spiritual status of the leader in certain key roles.
It's a pragmatic, realistic approach to leadership selection.
It has to be. In a catastrophic infrastructure failure, for instance, you'd hire a highly effective engineer, even if their personal life is a mess, rather than a very pious but administratively weak leader whose failure to fix things would cost lives.
The ideal is always Qawwah al-Amin.
Always. But in forced trade-offs for critical roles, the priority shifts based on the function and the magnitude of potential collective harm.
Okay, let's apply this theoretical architecture to some specific prophetic case studies, starting with Prophet Ibrahim. He provides the template for the meritocracy of leadership. His life defines how authority is earned, not inherited.
Abraham's story is absolutely critical because it explicitly refutes the idea of inherited authority. His appointment to imamah, supreme leadership, was conditional. The pivotal moment is in Surah Al-Baqarah.
And mention when Abraham was tried by his Lord with commands, kalimat, and he fulfilled them, Allah said, "Indeed, I will make you a leader, imam, for the people."
You see, his appointment was essentially a postgraduate certification. It wasn't a birthright. He had to earn it by completing the kalimat.
A continuous series of extreme trials designed to forge character under the most intense pressure.
That's right.
So what were these specific leadership trials that qualified him to be the imam?
The trials were existential. First, confronting the geopolitical tyrant of his age, Nimrod, even when facing mortal danger. This demanded Najah courage and real intellectual fortitude.
And then being thrown into the fire for his beliefs. That's a physical test of conviction and resilience.
And then the profound domestic test, being commanded to leave his wife Hajar and their infant son Ishmael in the desolate valley of Mecca. That's a test of absolute trust, abandoning all reliance on material comforts.
And the ultimate test of fidelity, the command to sacrifice his son.
These tests were designed to ensure that when Abraham eventually gained massive influence, he would govern with the patience, fortitude, and compassion that can only be born of suffering.
So the leadership insight here is profound. A leader who hasn't personally endured immense hardship or suffering often lacks the resilience and empathy required for genuine long-term governance.
Adversity is the prerequisite for authority.
And this verse immediately introduces the political accountability we were talking about earlier, the exclusion of the unjust, the dalaman.
Yes, when Abraham asks if his offspring will also inherit this leadership, the response is definitive. My covenant does not include the wrongdoers.
This is a powerful theological declaration of limited government.
As Ibn Kathir and others stressed, this verse is the ultimate refutation of the concept of the divine right of kings, whether it's based on lineage or some spiritual claim. If you commit tyranny, you forfeit the contract of leadership. Legitimacy is conditional on the unwavering application of justice, period.
But beyond the physical and emotional leadership, Abraham was a master of intellectual leadership. His debate strategy with his people about idol worship is a model for rational governance and persuasion.
Yes, in Surah Al-An'am, it's a textbook example of guiding discovery. He doesn't just condemn them. He starts by acknowledging the objects of their worship, the stars, the moon, the sun.
He observes them with his people, and he leads them through a logical, sequential process of elimination.
He notes that anything that sets or fails is limited, and therefore cannot be divine.
He didn't demand blind faith or issue a decree. He used their own reasoning capacity to guide them to the conclusion.
And that's transformational leadership. He respected their inherent rationality. This is so crucial for governance. A leader must not merely demand submission, but must elevate the cognitive state of their followers,
Creating a community capable of critical thinking.
which is essential for stable, long-term adherence to truth and law.
Okay, moving from the meritocrat to the liberator. Prophet Moses, Musa, gives us probably the most extensive case study on crisis management, dealing with entrenched tyranny, and crucially, the importance of strategic team building.
Moses' introduction to governance is a living, breathing application of that Qawweh al-Alamin hiring matrix we just discussed.
After he flees Egypt, he assists the daughters of the elder of Madian.
And one of them recommends him to her father. It's in Surah Al-Qasas. Indeed, the best one you can hire is the strong Qawweh and the trustworthy Amin.
Let's define those attributes practically, based on what happened. How was his Quwwah, his strength, proven on the spot?
His Quwwah was demonstrated operationally. He used his physical strength to lift the heavy stone covering the well to water their flock. He solved an immediate practical problem that others couldn't manage.
So it proved he had the technical competence, the operational capability, and the physical willingness for hard labor under pressure.
Exactly.
And the Amanah, the trustworthiness, the soft skill that was rooted in his moral integrity.
Yes, the commentators emphasize his modesty and self-restraint. When he was walking back to the house with her, he made sure he didn't compromise her dignity or his own character.
So it showed he prioritized moral conduct and professional distance.
And that combination, functional competence plus ethical character, is the timeless standard for employment.
But the real test comes when he is commissioned to confront Pharaoh. And Moses, despite his physical strength and moral standing, immediately admits a profound limitation.
His speech impediment.
Right, and this is strategic self-awareness, which is a hallmark of effective leadership.
In Surah Taha, he doesn't hide his weakness out of ego. He performs a candid SWOT analysis of himself and immediately seeks a complementary asset. He understood that oratory was mission-critical for negotiating with Pharaoh and mobilizing a skeptical population.
He requested his brother Aaron, Harun, not just as a subordinate, but using the profound phrase, "and let him share my task."
Ashriku fi amri. It means, make him a partner in my authority. Moses recognized that eloquence was a mission-critical function he lacked. He needed a rhetorical force multiplier.
The lesson is that effective leaders are secure enough to admit their limitations.
And they actively seek complementary teaming, bringing in partners who compensate for their weaknesses. Ego is the greatest threat to mission success.
But despite the strategic teaming, Moses then had the monumental challenge of leading the liberated but deeply traumatized children of Israel through the wilderness.
It was an immense leadership challenge. He was guiding a newly freed, cynical population that was consistently rebellious.
The infamous incident in the desert where they refused to enter the Holy Land and told him, "Go, you and your Lord, and fight. Indeed, we are remaining right here."
That exemplifies radical insubordination and the victim mentality that's so common among populations that have lived under tyranny.
So this demands what you might call patience in governance, or hilm. How did Moses' leadership illustrate this forbearance?
Moses never abandoned the mission or the people, even at their most frustrating. He consistently advocated for them before the Creator. He would complain of their behavior, but then he would plead for mercy and forgiveness for them.
It shows that leading a broken community requires infinite patience and forbearance, recognizing that their failures are often rooted in generations of psychological trauma.
Exactly. Trauma under Pharaonic tyranny.
We also see the immense humanizing burden of leadership. Even Moses, a prophet of immense strength, experienced burnout.
When he threw down the tablets after the golden calf incident, yes.
And that moment is so crucial because it reminds us that prophetic leadership, while divinely inspired, is performed by humans who are susceptible to immense stress.
The leader can falter, can express human frustration, but the ultimate duty is to endure. The key is that Moses recovered, he re-engaged, and he continued the task of guiding and educating a recalcitrant people.
Demonstrating adaptive persistence in the face of leadership fatigue.
And the overwhelming demands of the Amanah.
Let's transition now to the prophets who served in high executive offices. Prophet Joseph Yusuf provides the ultimate blueprint for the high-level technocrat and economic steward operating at the very core of statecraft in a foreign land.
Joseph's story directly addresses that political theory question. Is seeking power acceptable? Generally, it's discouraged. Power is a burden, not a prize.
But after interpreting the king's dream about the impending 7 years of famine, Joseph actively proposes himself for a specific functional position.
He does. And he didn't just ask for the job. He presented credentials that perfectly matched the crisis at hand.
Hafiz and Alim, guardian and knowledgeable.
This is the formal resume of the crisis manager and the technocrat. Hafiz, guardian, refers to his integrity. The character needed to guard the state treasury and national food security, preventing embezzlement, ensuring ethical distribution.
And Alim, knowledgeable, refers to the technical expertise in agriculture, supply chain logistics, and macroeconomics necessary to manage a 15-year crisis cycle.
His expertise was demonstrable and verifiable. It fulfilled both pillars of Quwwah el-Amin.
So this brings up the critical exception to the rule. Why was seeking power considered a moral duty here?
Classical scholars like Al-Qurtubi clarify this. When a systemic crisis is imminent, a famine that could destroy the entire civilization, and only one individual possesses the precise, specialized skill set to avert that catastrophe.
Then seeking that position transitions from personal ambition to an obligatory public service, a wajib.
It's the moral imperative to save lives through competence. In a civilization-threatening crisis, technical expertise is mandatory.
And his execution of the plan was a masterclass in economic statecraft. He implemented a 15-year counter-cyclical economic policy based entirely on his predictive modeling.
His blueprint was visionary. Phase 1.
7
years of unprecedented productivity and austerity, and crucially, he instructed them to store the grain in its ear.
A simple, ancient practice.
But it minimized spoilage and maximized long-term preservation and shelf life. This is strategic investment and sustainable resource management, not just maximizing yield, but maximizing the utility and longevity of the resource.
And then phase 2, the 7 years of drought. This required managing rationing, ensuring equitable, centralized distribution.
Which essentially functioned as a pioneering welfare state, ensuring the most marginalized did not starve.
Joseph demonstrated incredible foresight. He knew the how of saving the state. He didn't rely on wishful thinking. He provided a detailed, phased roadmap.
And that shows that prophetic leadership requires granular technical understanding and foresight, not just high-level ethical vision.
His tenure then culminates in a deeply important lesson about the ethics of victory, the restorative justice he applied to his brothers who had betrayed him years earlier.
Yes, when he finally reveals himself, he holds absolute power over them. The standard political response would have been summary execution or lifelong enslavement.
But instead, Joseph declares, "No reproach on you this day, may Allah forgive you,"
He prioritized social cohesion and state stability over personal score settling.
which is critical for post-conflict stability.
Absolutely.
Mm.
By granting amnesty, he secured the immediate loyalty of his family and ensured that the new political reality was based on forgiveness, not fear. This is the application of Amanah in victory.
Ensuring the stability and unity required for long-term governance.
Exactly.
Next, we examine Prophet David Dawood, who, along with Solomon, represents that rare convergence of prophethood and kingship. David's narrative focuses sharply on judicial ethics and the indispensable nature of due process.
David's leadership test, detailed in Surah Sad, is central to Islamic legal philosophy. The story involves the two adversaries who tested his impartiality.
The famous case of the wealthy man with 99 sheep demanding the single sheep of his poor neighbor.
Right. And David immediately judges against the wealthy man, but God instantly corrects him. While his moral inclination was correct, the procedure was fatally flawed.
So what were the specific procedural errors?
Scholars identify two grave mistakes, which are highlighted by the divine correction. First, haste. He judged the case immediately after hearing only the plaintiff.
Violating the foundational legal principle of audi alteram partem. Listen to the other side.
A judge must be neutral until all evidence is presented. His personal moral inclination toward the poor man prejudiced the process.
And second, isolation. The text notes that the adversaries had to climb the wall into his private chamber.
Which suggests he was inaccessible. And this is critical. Justice, especially from the supreme executive authority, must be public, transparent, and readily accessible to all citizens, rich or poor. If the ruler isolates himself, they become prone to making rash, uninformed, and partial decisions.
And the divine correction is the ultimate statement on political legitimacy. "O David, indeed, we have made you a successor, Khalifa, upon the earth, so judge between the people in truth and do not follow your own desire." Hawa.
This establishes that due process and rigorous judicial procedure are non-negotiable, even for a prophet king. The leader must follow the law and is explicitly warned against following personal inclination, hawa. Justice has to be transparent and impartial.
Moving to his son, Prophet Solomon, Suleiman, we explore executive management on a global scale, commanding vast resources. His leadership focused on accountability, state security, and the antidote to absolute power.
Solomon's reign is the epitome of high-level statecraft, combined with microscopic attention to detail. The Hoopoe incident in Surah An-Nam is a classic example of management by exception.
Solomon noticed a single, seemingly insignificant bird was missing from his massive logistical apparatus.
Which shows an accountability culture where even the smallest absence is noted. No one is too small to be noticed.
But crucially, he didn't assume malice.
No, he immediately issued a due process clause. I will surely punish him unless he brings me clear authorization or a valid excuse. He demands justification, demonstrating fairness and a lack of impulsive punishment.
And when the Hoopoe returned with this revolutionary intelligence about the Queen of Sheba, Solomon didn't react rashly.
Even with the opportunity to mobilize his forces instantly, he didn't. State security relies on verification. He implemented the principle of tabayyun.
Verification.
He sent a diplomatic message and waited for the response and confirmation before mobilizing his forces. Leadership cannot make major geopolitical moves based on unverified intelligence, even if the source is otherwise trusted. Prudence and rigorous checking must outweigh impulse.
My favorite ethical check in his story is the ant incident. Solomon, the emperor of the world, stopped his entire army because the ant community leader issued a warning.
It's profoundly symbolic. Solomon paused his advance to listen to the warning of the most marginalized and powerless creature.
The lesson is universal. The measure of ethical statecraft is how meticulously the leader attends to the concerns, safety, and welfare of all subjects, especially those who are politically and physically insignificant.
A just ruler listens to the ant before the army.
And what was Solomon's immediate, spontaneous reaction to all this overwhelming power?
Gratitude. Shukr.
The psychological antidote to tyranny.
It is. Power is intrinsically corrupting because it tempts the leader toward arrogance. kibr. Solomon immediately grounded his power in gratitude to God, viewing his immense capabilities not as a right of superiority, but as a test of humility and service. This act ensured his power remained ethical and service-oriented.
We move now to two final models focused on the ultimate psychological and strategic aspects of leadership. We'll start with Prophet Noah, Nu, the archetype of resilience and fidelity to mission over external outcome.
Noah's 950-year mission is the ultimate case study in long-term persistence. Istiqamah. His leadership teaches us that success is measured by the integrity and fidelity of the effort, not by superficial external metrics.
Not the size of your following or your political popularity.
No. He continued to warn and guide despite near-total rejection.
And his methodology was remarkably adaptive. It's detailed in Surah Nu. He demonstrated this adaptive persistence, pivoting constantly when one tactic failed.
His communication strategy demonstrates incredible strategic diversity.
Yeah.
First, temporal diversity. He worked night and day, relentless, non-stop effort.
Ensuring the message was always present.
Second, modal diversity. He switched between addressing them publicly in large gatherings and counseling them secretly in intimate sessions, tailoring his message to the environment and audience.
And third, content diversity. He appealed to their immediate motivations.
To their self-interest, reign, wealth, children. To their intellect, the creation of the sun and moon as signs. And to their spiritual duty.
This adaptive persistence is essential for leaders operating in hostile or stagnant environments. When one approach fails, you have to analyze the audience, pivot the tactic, but maintain the clarity of the core mission.
Noah teaches that a leader must be flexible in execution while remaining absolutely rigid on the fundamental objective.
And now we arrive at Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the universal synthesizer whose life provides the culmination of all these prior leadership models: technocracy, justice, patience, and crucially, restorative leadership and high-level statecraft.
We have to begin with the ultimate test of leadership psychology, managing catastrophic failure and insubordination, the aftermath of the Battle of Uhud.
The archers disobeyed explicit orders, causing a military rout and immense loss of life. The standard military reaction globally would have been punishment, court-martial.
But the prophetic reaction, commanded in the Quran, was leniency, lint, rooted in deep mercy. This is the model for restorative leadership in action.
The verse provides three non-negotiable steps for post-crisis recovery and team rebuilding.
Step 1. Pardon them, tafu anhum. Immediate, unconditional forgiveness for the operational mistake. The leader absorbs the cost of the failure to prevent internal division.
Step 2. Ask forgiveness for them, wastaghfir lahum. So the leader addresses the spiritual and psychological trauma of the failing members, elevating the pardon from a political act to a spiritual one.
Mitigating their guilt. And then step 3, the most counterintuitive element. Consult them. Washawirhum fil amr.
Why consult people whose judgment had just failed the community so spectacularly?
Al-Qurtubi and others explain the profound psychological insight here. By consulting them immediately, the prophet restored their dignity. He signaled that he still trusted them, and he rebuilt the critical cohesion required for the team to function again.
He treated their failure as a momentary lapse to be corrected through consultation, rather than a permanent character flaw to be punished. This restored psychological safety.
And it ensured the Ummah remained unified. It ensured that the failure did not become a permanent fissure in the community. That strategy is critical for any modern organization dealing with systemic error. You must focus on rebuilding trust and capacity immediately.
Let's shift to high-stakes strategy. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah is often cited as the pinnacle of strategic patience. Yet to the companions like Umar, it initially looked like a devastating, unnecessary humiliation.
They felt they were surrendering their dignity, agreeing to return home without completing their pilgrimage, accepting deeply unfavorable terms, like returning any Meccan convert who fled to Medina. Their emotional reaction was one of betrayal and confusion.
But the prophet held firm. He absorbed the short-term tactical loss, knowing he was securing a massive long-term strategic victory. What was the measurable result of this patience?
The 10-year truce was the strategic prize. It de-escalated the conflict, neutralizing the immediate threat of Meccan aggression and allowing the Muslims to focus their energy and resources on other fronts.
And critically, the cessation of hostilities created an opening.
A physical and psychological opening. The Meccans, freed from the emotional pressures of war, could interact with and observe the functioning of the Muslim state in Medina.
And the population metric, it speaks for itself.
It does. The source material notes that the Muslim population tripled in the 2 years immediately following the treaty. The strategic patience, which the companions struggled to grasp initially, resulted in exponential organic growth and political legitimacy.
Ultimately leading directly to the nonviolent conquest of Mecca.
Emotional reactivity would have doomed the mission. Strategic patience paved the way for victory.
And this principle of pluralism in statecraft, it was established right from the very beginning of the Medinan state in the Charter of Medina.
That document is revolutionary. It created a civil state based on a binding legal contract, not purely shared religious identity. It included the Jewish tribes and various polytheistic clans.
And the key provision declared the Jews to be one community, Ummah, with the believers.
Which defined citizenship based on a shared contract and territorial affiliation, rather than creed alone. It laid the foundation for a federalist structure that balanced rights and duties.
Mutual defense was guaranteed, religious freedom was protected.
To the Jews, their religion, and to the Muslims, their religion. And the Prophet served as the supreme arbiter for disputes. This model demonstrates that a state can function effectively, ensuring rights and stability, even with profound diversity, provided the citizens are bound by a shared civic contract.
And we see that inclusiveness extends to strategic military decisions, most notably at the Battle of the Trench, Kandak.
The combined forces of the Meccans and their allies were threatening total annihilation. So the Prophet immediately convened a shura, a council of consultation. The challenge was finding a novel defense strategy against a massive, coordinated attack.
And the winning idea came from Salman al-Farsi, a foreigner, a minority, a recent convert.
Someone who brought non-Arab military expertise to the table. Salman, drawing on Persian military techniques unknown to the Arabs, proposed digging a massive defensive trench around the vulnerable parts of Medina.
And the Prophet immediately adopted the idea.
This is cognitive diversity in action. The leader valued hikmah, wisdom, regardless of the source, breaking down ethnocentric arrogance and ensuring that the best possible solution derived from minority expertise was implemented. It saved the city.
Finally, the ultimate demonstration of prophetic leadership is the ethics of power at the conquest of Mecca. The Prophet had absolute power to exact vengeance against those who had persecuted his family and followers for decades.
His decision was perhaps the most crucial political move of his life. Instead of retribution, he announced the general amnesty, the talaka, using the exact restorative words of Joseph.
No reproach on you this day. Go, for you are free.
He used power not as a weapon for personal score settling, but as a surgical tool for reconciliation and securing long-term peace.
By forgiving the old elite and co-opting them into the new political order, he prevented a protracted insurgency and civil war.
This is transformation through mercy, destroying the enemy by making them stable partners in the new state. This synthesis of Moses' strength, Joseph's restorative justice, and Noah's patience ensured political stability for generations.
So looking across this entire deep dive, from the constitutional framework of Al-Mawardi to the sociological realism of Ibn Khaldun and the practical case studies of the prophets, the research converges on one unified theory.
Prophetic leadership is fundamentally a service-oriented trust.
It's the essential paradox of this leadership model, isn't it? The leader is endowed with the highest authority, yet must govern with the humility, patience, and selflessness of the lowest servant.
Always accountable to the Creator. And we see that effective leadership is fundamentally situational. It requires the leader to be adaptable.
It demands the strength, the Quwwah of Moses to confront corruption and execute policy.
The planning, the alim of Joseph to manage economic fragility.
The resilience, the istiqamah of Noah to withstand isolation and failure.
And above all, the comprehensive mercy, the rahmatan lil alamin of Prophet Muhammad to unite disparate hearts through justice and forgiveness.
So for you, the learner, integrating this blueprint into your life demands a conscious shift. You have to stop viewing any position of authority you hold, whether it's managing a team, leading a family, serving on a board, as a privilege you've earned.
And instead, embrace it as a sacred burden of accountability, subject to the standards of rigorous justice, adala. It requires the constant, nonstop cultivation of both professional competence, Quwwah, to ensure you are effective.
And moral character, Amin, to ensure you are ethical.
And you have to remember the fundamental political doctrine that legitimates all these models. Leadership is conditional on justice. The moment justice is forsaken, the legitimacy of the rule is functionally dissolved.
The ultimate legacy of any leader is measured not by the size of the monuments they build, the wealth they accumulate, or the force they command, but by the compassion and rigorous justice they display to the weakest people when they possess the absolute power to do otherwise. So the question for you is, what situation in your professional or personal life right now demands that application of compassionate competence? Jazakallah khairan, and may Allah reward you with goodness for spending your valuable time listening to us.